Now, when it comes to success, how a video game is promoted can be more important than the game itself. After all, some of the best titles bombed because the marketing was inadequate or mishandled, and for this reason, gaming trailers need to make the product look as desirable as possible. But in some cases, they actually do too good a job and oversell things to the extent that when you play the actual game, you're like, oh, this isn't actually what I was promised. But you know what? Some of these games, they're still pretty good anyway. So let's have a chat about them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game trailers that lied, but were still awesome. Number 10, Call of Duty 2. Now, when it comes to overselling a game, one of the most common tactics is to pass off pre-rendered footage for in-game graphics. Many players purchase Watch Dogs, Alien Colonial Marines, or Cyberpunk 2077 only to learn the IP looked kind of like nothing how it was advertised. Sadly, Activision couldn't help but use this manipulative ploy for Call of Duty 2. Although the sequel's commercial was a pre-rendered movie, it was deliberately stylized to resemble gameplay footage. To avoid succumbing to an overhyped product, players usually take too good to be true footage like this with a big heap of salt. Nevertheless, the teaser managed to fool a lot of people. Since COD 2 was a next-gen launch title, it wasn't clear how far the technology could be pushed. Also, fans wanted to give the developer the benefit of a doubt, considering how revolutionary the original game was. In hindsight, this deception was pretty pointless actually, as Call of Duty 2 was still a magnificent first-person shooter in its own right. In fact, Activision kind of shot themselves in the foot since the Advertising Standards Authority ordered networks to stop advertising this game in this way. Number 9, DokiDoki Literature Club. Now, unlike other entries on this list, the deceptive promotions for DokiDoki Literature Club actually enhance the gaming experience. Now, on the surface, every aspect of this anime-styled visual novel appears to be harmless. The upbeat music, the cheeky schoolgirls, bonding through poetry, the pink hearts, everything about Team Salvato's freeware indie game looked so bloody cute. But before purchasing DDLC, consumers should probably take a notice that this adorable visual novel has been slapped with a mature rating. Rest assured, the rating is not an oversight. Despite the sweet and innocent aesthetic, it isn't long before DokiDoki descends into a meta-horror game nightmare. Although DokiDoki Literature Club is an innovative title that flawlessly subverted expectations, it's not for the faint of heart. Players who are hoping to play an easygoing dating sim will not be impressed by the game's intense themes and disturbing imagery. When the expanded Plus version was announced, a less subtle trailer was put together. Though it still maintains the whimsical facade, it repeatedly emphasizes DokiDoki Literature Club isn't what it appears to be to ensure customers don't buy it under false pretenses. Number 8, Gears of War. Gears of War is a futuristic action shooter overflowing with roided-up meatheads, machismo-filled dialogue, and yes, chainsaw guns. Delicious. But when Epic Games' series was revealed way in 2006, people thought that it was something else entirely. Now, to be fair, the trailer doesn't hide the elements which the franchise is renowned for, as it's got disproportionately large guns, ugly aliens, and a soldier whose bulky physique defies the laws of human anatomy. However, the teaser also gives off a completely different vibe. The fact that Mad World plays throughout gives the false impression that Gears of War is an emotionally charged survival horror drenched in palpable tension. The trailer only highlights one human character, erroneously indicating that our beefy hero will likely face this cosmic threat alone. Contrary to what was sold, Gears of War is an over-the-top shooter that focuses less on invoking emotions and more on blasting oversized holes in extraterrestrials' faces. Interestingly, this trailer would have been better suited for the sequels, since the later installments humanize the ensemble and offer a much more personal experience. Although the trailer misrepresented the property, it didn't stop Gears of War from becoming one of Microsoft's most successful brands for nearly 2 decades. Number 7, Assassin's Creed. Based on the first Assassin's Creed trailer, the Ubisoft IP looked like a historic hack and slash which had the player utilize stealth and parkour to eliminate their targets. Now, although this assessment is accurate, there's one key element which the promotions neglected to mention. Shortly after booting up the game, players were confused to learn Assassin's Creed takes place in the modern day. Not only that, the narrative centers around genetic memories, futuristic simulations, cosmic artifacts, and yes, even aliens. Even though the glitchy effects in the trailer hinted that there was more going on than meets the eye, few actually picked up on their significance. With the benefit of hindsight, it was a wise decision to keep this subplot hidden, since it would have been too convoluted to condense it into a concise trailer. Also, it was kind of a nice surprise for players when they realised that Assassin's Creed was secretly a sci-fi title. Not only did this undisclosed plotline fail to hinder the experience, it actually improved upon it, since it offered a much deeper narrative than actually advertised. Even if the subplot didn't work, Assassin's Creed would have still stood up on its own merits, due to the fluid combat, phenomenal world building, addictive parkour sections, and yes, pretty exceptional stealth mechanics, when they decided to work. Number 6. Elite Dangerous. Since its debut in 1984, the Elite series has centered around space trading and combat simulation, but after checking out Elite Dangerous's promotions, it seemed the MMO was gearing more towards action, like a lot of action. The teaser depicts ships blasting asteroids, enemy vessels, and space stations with an endless stream of bullets, all while rock and roll music blares in the background. Now, anyone unfamiliar with the property safely assumed that they were looking at a battle title, especially since it's called Elite Dangerous. After seeing the footage, even die-hard fans who knew the franchise as a space flight simulation would have believed that Dangerous was going to be a more bombastic entry than its predecessors. But that wasn't the case. Once again, the gameplay primarily involves trading, mining, exploring, and yes, more trading. Although there are action-orientated activities, it's less grandiose than the commercials suggested. With that said, this space sandbox is light years ahead of its competition, thanks to its balanced mechanics, accessible features, and a literal galaxy full of content. The ability to take on many roles, including couriers, traders, pirates, infiltrators, and mercenaries, offers a huge amount of replayability and diversity in the gameplay. Even though Elite Dangerous was a tremendous game, you do have to feel bad for anyone who bought it expecting something like Star Wars. Number 5. Tekken 5. Although Tekken 5's trailer was suitably kick-ass, there was one specific moment that blew fans away. At the end of the teaser, Kazuya leaves his nefarious father Heihachi at the mercy of a dozen androids. One of the robots detonates, turning the area into a crater. And just to make the circumstances as unambiguous as possible, a text appears on screen reading, "Heihachi Mishima is dead." This decision to axe off Kazuya's old man was as shocking as it was bold. Being the crux of the story since day one, Heihachi's demise would surely create a cataclysmic shift in the overall narrative. Well, at least it would have if the spiky-haired villain was actually dead. You see, in the story mode, it's revealed that Heihachi is alive, despite being at the epicenter of that explosion. However, this fake-out didn't ruin the overall experience. In fact, Tekken 5 is considered a return to form for the franchise. Though Tekken Tag Tournament and Tekken 4 were great games, they kind of lacked innovation, and this installment cranked everything up to 11, including the mechanics, graphics, combat speed, and the roster. The new fighters were so well received that several have appeared in every follow-up since, and as an added bonus, the PS2 port threw in Tekken 1 to 3 for free. Nevertheless, it's rather odd how Heihachi's death played a major role in advertising Tekken 5, considering it was contradicted half an hour into the main campaign. Now, where have they done this before? Recent Tekken game? Number 4. Dragon Age Origins. Now, BioWare has a gift for devising role-playing IPs which focus on extensive character development that branch off into different paths and provide strategic combat. Although Dragon Age Origins follows this design, it didn't seem that way at first thanks to not one but two misleading trailers. Nearly every frame in the We Are Grey Wardens teaser consists of decapitations, dismemberments, and crushing skulls. With Marilyn Manson's screams singing throughout, Dragon Age Origins looked like, well, the edgiest fantasy game ever. Although Origins definitely has gore, the gameplay is more centered around turn-based combat, dialogue trees, and developing relationships with NPCs. Then there's the sad Ashes trailer. Not only does the footage oversell the violence yet again, it depicts the human characters with realistically proportioned faces, but in-game, the people have more exaggerated and cartoonish features. Despite the fumbled marketing, the fantasy IP was lauded for its cohesive world-building, relatable characters, and addictive gameplay. Since then, Dragon Age has become one of the biggest fantasy brands over the last decade, and this feat is all the more impressive considering the advertising team clearly did not have a clue who their target audience was. Number 3. Dead Island. I mean, you know this one by now. It's the slow-motion reverse trailer showing the family being absolutely destroyed from the perspective of their youngest daughter. It is a thing of beauty. It is a short masterpiece, if I'm honest, and could easily have just been released as a standalone short film and probably won awards. But no, it was attached to Dead Island, a game that has pretty much none of this. And by none of this, I mean emotion, pacing, creative direction. It definitely had a lot of zombies, I'll give it that much, but the rest of it, nah. Still a good game though, still a good game, but just not as emotional as this. Number 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, with a title like Final Fantasy VII Remake, fans expected Square's long-awaited RPG to be an expanded recreation of its predecessor. I mean, sure, some aspects would be tweaked and updated, but it was assumed that the narrative would remain identical. But after 10 hours or so, it becomes clear that this isn't a remake, but a reimagining. A huge portion of the plot revolves around new characters called the Whispers, who are tasked with maintaining the continuity of the original timeline. When Sephiroth discovers it's his destiny to lose, his entire scheme shifts, irrevocably altering the story. Although some Final Fantasy VII fans hated this revision, others loved it. Since the canon has been altered, players don't know how the story is going to play out, making every beat change more impactful. However, there's another change that pretty much everybody hated, which the trailers did not indicate. Rather than reimagining Final Fantasy VII in a single game, this title is the first of a trilogy. As such, Remake only recreates the first 15% or so of the original Final Fantasy VII. Despite its initial backlash, Remake is still a remarkable game. The graphics have never looked better, every mechanic has been enhanced to perfection, and there's an avalanche of extra characters and areas to explore. Though it only covers a snippet of the sprawling saga, it spends far more time world-building and fleshing out the characters, which is a good thing. Not only is Final Fantasy VII Remake a work of art, the once reviled departures of canon, well, they're amongst the best parts. So yeah, it's a win-win, lose-lose, win-lose, lose-win situation. You know, one of them. And number 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. After Metal Gear Solid revolutionized the gaming industry, Hideo Kojima's follow-up could not come sooner. After the gaming community saw Solid Snake in the MGS2 promotions, trailers, and gameplay footage, it sent them into a frenzy. So, when the chain-smoking hero seemingly dies in the opening, players found themselves controlling a new agent called Raiden. Now, this change-up wasn't as shocking as it sounds, at least at first. Plenty of games have players take control of different characters for specific missions before then reverting back to the protagonist. When Snake appears shortly after, it further cements the idea that the player is only taking control of Raiden momentarily, but when the legendary mercenary suddenly leaves again, it becomes clear that MGS2 has pulled a switcheroo. Unsurprisingly, this revelation infuriated the masses, since the trailers convinced everyone that Snake was the protagonist. In fact, there are certain shots in the trailer where Raiden's model was swapped out with Snake, so nobody suspected the truth, and that was pretty sneaky. So MGS2 got a lot of flack at first, but it has since garnered immeasurable praise for its improved stealth mechanics, fine-tuned combat, focus on exploration, diverse range of bosses, and its incredibly prophetic story. Also, Hideo Kojima's ballsy move does ultimately pay off. Not only does the bait-and-switch stop Metal Gear Solid 2 from feeling derivative, players learn more about Snake through his teammates who constantly discuss his backstory and try to separate the man from the myth. Although Raiden's debut could have been a gimmick, he's since been accepted as an integral part of the franchise. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 video game trailers that lied, but were still awesome. I hope that you enjoyed that, and let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on X and Instagram, where it's @RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there, and I hope that you're doing well, my friend, treating yourself with that love and respect that you bloody well deserve. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.